Hi there, I'm back here again with my Macintosh Classic II. You should have seen me in our previous video if you've seen that. I had a bit of an issue trying to get it up and running. It's got a few quirks to it, which I'm going to try and fix today. I'll just power it up and hopefully some of these sort of quirks will sort of manifest straight away so we can actually see. There we go, we've got the lines on the screen there. So sometimes after rebooting and recycling a couple of times, it'll boot up into the operating system. So I know that most of the components are actually working fine on there. This is very typical when you look online in various forums. This is it's the capacitors on the main board that are leaking. So this video today I'm going to just basically do a quickly try and replace all the capacitors on the main board. I'm not going to talk you through the process. If you really want to know how to recap, change surface mounted capacitors, I'll post a few videos with Adrian's Digital Basement and Necroware, places like that, where Mark fixes things who are really good at showing you how to do it with the macro lenses. I don't have a macro lens, but so all I'm going to do is just record me dismantling this, taking out the main board, replacing all the capacitors, putting it all back together, and then we'll see if at the end of the video, when I switch it on, we get a better result. As well as the lines, actually, I'm going to point out I did have a bit of problem with how it fits the screen as well, and I've had to properly maximise the vertical width of the screen using the dials. So I'm hoping that replacing the capacitors on the board will affect that, but we'll see. It's also making a bit of a high-pitched noise. I don't know if you noticed that. I think that's coming through the sound. So again, it's probably going to be controlled by the board, but we'll see what problems this fixes if I don't brick the entire board. My method for replacing the capacitors, I mean, it's a fairly standard method, is just heat up the pads on either side of one side of the capacitor, try and wiggle it free a bit, heat up the pad on the other side of the capacitor, try and wiggle that free. If that doesn't work, because sometimes the electrolytic sort of fluid can actually make the capacitors, sorry, the solder less easy to sort of melt, I can try adding a bit of extra solder, and if that all else fails, I'll fall back onto Adrian Digital Basement's method of literally just very gently wiggling it free until it breaks. Then once I've got the capacitor out, I'll use a bit of wick, heat up the wick to try and absorb any leftover solder, get it nice and clean, the pad, then reapply some fresh solder onto the pad, and then apply the capacitors. I've just got some aluminium capacitors here. Obviously this is just one bag of them. I have got others, the different values that I need. I've also got a picture of the a diagram of the board which I've downloaded, but I'll take a photograph of the board before I start dismantling anything, just so I can make sure that I get all the capacitors in the right place with the right values, but also I get the negative pole of the capacitor on the right side as well. So that's my process. I'm just going to record me doing that, and hopefully at the end of the video we'll have a working Macintosh. So that's the board recapped. So I've had a bit of trouble with this, you know. I mean, this is I'm quite a novice at recapping. Needs to give this a bit of a clean up. And what I found over here, I started over this side of the board here, and first couple of caps came off really easily with my technique of just heating them up and lifting them at one side, heating them up the other side. But then I lost a couple of pads, and the pads are actually copper bits which are actually embedded in the board that the actual caps are actually mounted onto. So I persisted with that a bit, but I've got a couple here that I've had to actually, because the pads have come off, it's very difficult to see, I haven't got a decent lens, but I've had to actually patch the cap over to the nearest sort of point which I could find, which on the circuit board, because the pads have come off. And when I get over to this side of the board, I decided, well, I'll actually follow the expert's advice. Like I say, Adrian's Digital Basement suggests just rocking these things until they actually come off. And what you find is that sometimes the cap will come off and leave the legs on. So sometimes you just have to snap the leg off, and then when you use a solder wick, it just lifts the legs out quite easily. You just need to make sure you find them. You don't want to leave them sitting around on the board anyway. Get the legs off. You know, clean up the pads, and you just tends to be much better. So I wish I'd have kind of followed his advice originally. So I gave it a bit of a test after that first point, but we're still getting the problem with the lines down the screen. So I'm hoping, I've tried to test continuity for all these dodgy connections using my multimeter, you probably would have seen as well. So it is all recapped now. I've replaced all these surface mounted capacitors. So I'm just going to give the board a really good clean as well as I can without dislodging some of these. Hopefully they're solid enough now, these joints. And then we'll try and plug it in and see if we've got any improvement, or whether I have literally just bricked this this classic Mac. So I've given some rudimentary testing with my continuity meter, visual testing, looking for make sure I haven't made any sort of shorts across anything with solder, and I think it looks all right to me. But let's give it a try, see if can even get anything now. See if I can make sure I haven't bricked it, or see if it actually works. I haven't got a keyboard plugged in, so. That was a positive sound, I think. Now look at that. Working. Let's see if I don't know if you can plug the keyboard in whilst it's booting, whether that'll crash it or not. Let's give it a try. The sort of motherboard sort of sitting quite precariously underneath, actually. Right, now that's just booted straight up, no problems at all. And it's not making the noise actually it was before. So again, I think the noise being generated by the motherboard. We were getting. It was actually coming out of the speaker. At first I thought it was something to do with the tube, but I don't think it was. I think it was actually coming out of the speaker. It was generated by probably dodgy capacitance levels on the motherboard. So look at that, straight up. Right, I think what I'll do is I'll stop the video and I'll put it back together properly, and then I will give it another test and see what happens. But that's a very promising start, isn't it? So there we go. This is not being like one of my normal videos. Like if you watch my last Macintosh video, I had a hell of a lot of problems getting anything up and running. This all seems to have gone pretty smoothly, working first time. Again, a bit of problem with those pads on the capacitors, but yeah, I think if I'd have followed the expert's advice straight away, I wouldn't have had any problem at all. But here we go, we've got the Macintosh Classic, boots up every time now, no issues, which is great news for me. Yeah, the only slight problem I had was because these new capacitors, because the surface mount capacitors just sit flat on the motherboard, so you don't really have any issues with them getting caught on things and stuff. But obviously when you put in these capacitors that I've got are supposed to be through hole capacitors, so you kind of like soldering them onto the surface. It's a bit tricky, but you end up with a capacitor that's sort of sticking out, so you just need to make sure you fold them away into positions that are kind of, one, not shorting anything out, but two, just keeping out of the way of everything. But here we go. Really pleased I've done this now. Getting a lot more confident with my soldering skills, so maybe there'll be some more advanced repairs coming up in future. Let's just get Prince of Persia going on here. Again, I haven't got many big games going on here at the moment, but I have to copy them across some floppy drives, so it's not always that easy to do. But and to be fair, you know, it's not really a gaming machine, is it? But it looks nice, you know. Oh, the volume's quite low, isn't it? I can't hear that volume. Hang on. I'm trying to remember how to. I think because I've taken the battery out, every time I reset it now, the volume gets reset. It doesn't save the volume. Right, let's see where I can set control panels, sound. Get rid of that Prince of Persia window. That's it. And speaker volume, let's bang that up to full. Oh, that's better, isn't it? Yeah. Right, file. Go back to the game. Open game. Let's load my previous game. There we go. Oh, it's come back to the copyright thing, so. Yeah, I mean, I can't decide whether I prefer the look of this to the look of the PC version. If you look at my last video, I've got the IBM PS2 up and running. I can't decide whether I prefer this. Obviously, the graphics here are more detailed. The sound's better because it's, you know, you just got the PC speaker on the IBM PS2. I haven't got a sound card for that. But obviously, it's colour graphics. But this is clearly a lot more detailed graphics on here. It's really been put together sort of nicely. Let's go on, let's take a gamble, see if that's the right drink. Yeah, it's damaged me. But there we go, all up and running. Really pleased with this this little project I've done today. Well worth the effort, and like I say, I'm developing my soldering skills, gaining a bit of experience there, so maybe I'll take on some more advanced projects. But that, I mean, considering a few weeks ago I would not have even considered replacing those surface mounted capacitors, but I've built up a bit of confidence. I replaced a few on my IBM PS2 and sort of thought I'd give it a try, because to be fair, it was a bit hit and miss with this machine, but it seems to be working, you know, perfectly now. So win-win for me. So see you next time. Thanks for watching.